So if you've not yet been over to check out Richard Grannon's channel, I highly recommend it. This guy is the expert on narcissistic personality disorder. You've probably guessed that I do quite like what he does. This is definitely not my first video that I've done based on Richard Grannon's videos. It's also quite likely not going to be the last that I do based on any of his videos. So pop over to his channel after you've watched my video and check out some of his other videos. Check out this video where he talks about the Covert Narcissist in full, because to me he really seems to be able to hit the nail on the head.
So within 30 seconds, the way that I would define somebody that you would be saying was functioning from a fragile narcissistic personality structure or strategy would be somebody who is cycling. So they're constantly in a cycle of elation and depletion. Unlike the grandiose narcissist who has a ready supply of narcissistic supply, so they're on a fairly continuous steady burn of elation, the fragile or vulnerable narcissist is failing all the time to get that supply. He gets it, he loses it. She wins it, she loses it again. So they cycle between elation and depletion. So therefore, they're more moody, generally speaking, than the grandiose narcissist, but also you'll see them cry. You'll see them fragile. You'll see them vulnerable. They will say sorry. They will apologize, but ultimately they're only cycling as they're trying to get back up to a position of power. Because everything that this personality disorder is all about power over others.
How familiar does that sound? Talking about the fragile or vulnerable narcissist being in a constant cycle of elation and depletion. He could have been talking about Megan Cole right there. I know that since she's been medicated, the cycle hasn't been quite as pronounced, but it still happens. You've seen it so many times. She hits that point where she's at the point of elation because she's manipulated people to do whatever it is she wanted them to do. She's manipulated people to be her followers, and she's getting the sympathy and the support that she needs to feed her narcissism. So she hits that point of elation, but then she gets called out on something, or something backfires on her, and she goes to that point of depletion. She gets shown up for who she is, and suddenly she's crying, she's all emotional, and she's all, poor me, woe is me, I'm such a victim. That right there is what he's talking about when he talks about the cycle between elation and depletion. You've all seen it firsthand. It is certainly really accurate the way he talks about the fragile narcissist being constantly failing to get narcissistic supply. They're constantly in that cycle between depletion and elation, trying to get more narcissistic supply. That's exactly what she does. She gets her narcissistic supply from others. She needs that validation from the people around her so she can achieve the elevation. But she can only feel that elevation for so long, becomes depleted, and she needs to reboot, I guess you could say. She needs more validation from the people around her. It comes down to her own sense of inadequacy. She can't satiate that herself, so she needs to manipulate people who can give her the narcissistic supply that will allow her to feel some level of adequacy. And yet she knows the truth, so she falls back down again. And sure, we all need people to build us up at one point in time, people to remind us of our good qualities. But that's not what this is. This is maladaptive behaviour. She needs validation from manipulation. She's got the whole narcissistic thing down pat. It's all about her, and it's all about feeling powerful. So to achieve that, she has to manipulate people so that they can build her up, so she can maintain that sense of power. He talks about the fragile narcissist being more moody than the grandiose narcissist. He says you'll see them cry and they will apologise. Wow, that sounds familiar. We've seen Megan cry those times when she's been called out on her behaviours, when her behaviour has been shown as being wrong and she can't refute that. That's when she has the meltdown. It's a manipulation strategy. That's all it is, because she knows that by having a meltdown and crying, people will come flocking back to her and she can start building herself back up again, back to that point of elation. Same with the apologies. When she's doing that whole poor me, poor fragile me, and making an apology, next time she's in that state, have a listen to the way she apologises. It's not a genuine apology. It's not a genuine apology like going, I'm such a mean person. I realise that my actions have caused harm to other people and that I shouldn't have done that. No, it's all about her. I'm such a horrible person. I don't know why anybody would love me. Go away. Don't look at me. I'm so horrible. I'm so sorry that I'm such a horrible person. She's waiting for a response there. Her apologies are basically her way of manipulating people back into her fold. She's acting vulnerable, and maybe in a little way she is vulnerable, but her fake apologies are there for one reason, and that is to suck people back in, the people who are so naive in the first place to follow her and listen to all the stuff that she says. She wants them to feel sorry for her. She wants them to believe that she is the victim. And by coming back into her fold, they're giving her a chance to go back up to the top of that cycle. They're giving her a chance to claim power again. Because at the end of the day, that's what it is for her. It is all about having power over others. She doesn't give two hoots about those people that flock around her, other than that they are there to give her the validation that she seeks, to enable her to hit the top again and feel powerful. She needs them to validate her narcissistic tendencies. They're not important to her. You heard how after Judy died, she was sad for a day or two, but then she came out and outright said, well, now that Judy's not here, I can do whatever I like. Even when someone like Judy, who was trying to be a true friend to her, trying to help her to be a better person, even with someone like that, she wasn't capable of truly caring for them. For her, it was all about what she could get from them. This is why you see, anytime if someone goes into her life and questions her or corrects her and tells her that she's doing something in a bad way, that she's not acting in a moral way, she gets rid of them pretty damn quick. People are only allowed to stay in her chat room if they are giving her the validation that she needs. If they're not, if they question her, they're out of there, because she needs those people in the chat room for her validation, for her narcissistic supply. For her to feel powerful, she needs narcissistic supply. She gets that because of the people that she manipulates, the people who boost her up when they should actually be turning around and saying, what you're doing is morally reprehensible, or what you're saying is cruel and unfair. But somehow these people flock to her. I don't know if it's a lack of morals, but they seem quite happy to boost her up and help her to find the power that she so much seeks.
The fragile or covert narcissist doesn't have power, so they manipulate, they cajole. This is why I think why covert is such a popular way of talking about them, is because they can't do it in a way that is direct. They have to be indirect. So this lack of power, this fragile structure that they're coming from, means that they have to be intensely manipulative. Which brings us to their favorite crazy-making weapon of choice. You will perceive them as fragile. And you'll go, well, they can't be one of those nasty classic narcissists, because last week they said sorry, and the week before that they started crying and opening up to me, and they made themselves vulnerable to me. So therefore it can't be narcissism, it must be something else. That's actually part of the weapon. The first part of the weapon, so it has like a 1-2 punch effect. The first part is to confuse you, which you will be confused, because you'll be like, well, who am I dealing with today? Which version of them? If they're related, they're showing up as grandiose. So if they've got their narcissistic supply, they'll be grandiose. They'll be the classic bullying narcissist, and you've seen them do that. But if they're depleted, then they'll be the vulnerable narcissist. They'll be much more sad. They'll show you that they're weak, that they need you, and you will feel confusion.
So the fragile or vulnerable narcissist is also referred to as the covert narcissist. To me, that hits the nail on the head perfectly. This is a person with a fragile ego and someone who is intensely manipulative. I think that is perfect description of what Megan does. If you think about the way she controls the people around her, when she needs to give herself that extra bit of power, what does she do? She cries, she acts vulnerable, she apologizes. But of course, we're talking about an online situation, so it's not like a relationship where someone can build up a personal relationship with someone that they can then use as a basis for manipulation. So what she does instead is she feigns interest in people in her chat room. But when you listen to her, she's really not genuine, and I'm surprised that these people don't pick this up. She really doesn't sound genuine. she'll make a comment and then she'll brush it off and she'll go back to talking about her. And she praises people. She feeds their ego to get them to follow her. So there's one person who follows her called Kerry. And this Kerry has been taught by Megan to jump in, put money into Megan's channel. This person is easily pleased by Megan publicly praising her and calling her her fairy godmother and carrying on about how she's just, bought another 10 memberships for people. So she makes a big deal about this woman spending money on her channel. So this woman comes back because she feels valued by Megan. She doesn't realise that were she to completely cut off funding, there's not a lot that she could actually offer Megan. She doesn't have a channel, so Megan can't praise her when she creates cruel content about the people that Megan dislikes. The only way she can earn her stripes, so to speak, is by saying the required bullying comments in Megan's chat and by paying money into Megan's accounts, buying memberships or buying super chats or whatever. Megan rewards people who are as cruel as her. And these people in turn boost her up. It's an odd relationship, but it's an online relationship. I guess you're going to expect it to be slightly odd. I'm going to coin a new phrase here and call it bully bonding, because that's what it is. The people that Megan rewards the most on her channel are the people who go out and bully on her behalf. And how does she achieve that? When all that is slowing down, she plays the victim. She acts fragile. She cries. She talks about herself being bullied. She forgets to mention the fact that she's the one who is doxing people. She's the one who's putting out false rumours about people. She's the one who went online and went around over a dozen different channels begging them to allow her up on panel because she had important information in relation to Kylie's disappearance. And how funny that Judy had this catchphrase of "how's the weather?" Because that falls into the description that Richard Grannon made perfectly. He talks about how with these fragile narcissists, the biggest thing with them is the confusion. You never know which version of them you're going to encounter at any one time. Are they going to be the fragile narcissist, or are they going to be on a high, acting the bully? And yes, this is their greatest weapon. I've mentioned this before, the way that Megan weaponizes her mental illness. When things aren't going her way and when people are calling her out, that's when she starts to act so fragile and she starts to cry and starts to make people think that she might be going to do something bad to herself. All of a sudden, her followers flock around her, and the content creators who have been calling her out for her bad behaviour, calling her out for her bullying, are suddenly silenced because they're afraid of the consequences. She's trying to make them feel guilty for upsetting her. That is the weapon of the covert narcissist. And the thing is, when you have that kind of thing happening online, you have the double whammy in that while she's trying to make people feel guilty for calling her out, she has followers who are going to go after those people who continue to call her out while she's in her fragile state. She knows how to manipulate people into feeling a sense of pity for her. And yet, if people stopped and stood back and actually had a look at the situation, perhaps they might see it for what it is, in that it is nothing but a manipulative technique. This is her way of swinging back up from the depletion phase to the elation phase so that she can turn around and start bullying people all over again. And we've seen it play out so many times. The last big one was last November when she started being quite horrible, and the people who were around her at the time actually called her out on it, and they walked away from her. And she realised that she'd made a mistake. So then, all of a sudden, she had that big breakdown. And people came flocking back to her. And people pitied her. And even I felt a little bit concerned and thought, well, maybe I should lighten up a bit. Maybe I'm being too harsh on her. But then I saw what was happening. As soon as she had people flocking back to her, she came back twice as hard with the bullying. Because she had her audience back. She had her supporters back. And more importantly, by acting so vulnerable and acting the victim, she had silenced the people who were calling her out for her bad behaviour. That's what a covert narcissist does.
So the first part of this weapon is to make the target feel confused. Who am I dealing with? The grandiose or the vulnerable one? Is it the vicious or the kind one? Which one of these two personas am I going to be dealing with today? Over and over and over again. So you never know where you are. So you're confused, you're upside down. And then the next thing that they'll do beyond the confusion, which is where the crazy makingness comes from, is they will leverage your pity in them by evoking massive feelings of guilt. These are the ones who give you the sob story. So their weapon comes in a package delivered, but it's only the missile delivery system. It's not the weapon itself. It's not the actual payload of the sob story. The sob story. So you will have a story of them orphaned, abandoned, some terrible tragic background, some operatic level dreadfulness that occurred to them. They're the biggest victim in the room.
Or perhaps the sob story of the person who only came into it to stand up for the underdog, and she's been bullied ever since and she did nothing to deserve it.
Don't you feel sorry for them? But what they've done is they've turned that good emotion, that standard emotion, and they've used it against the human host. They've gone, there's a weakness here. If I can present with the structure of fragility and I'm cycling through elation and depletion of narcissistic supply, that will confuse the target so they don't know which version of me that they're actually going to get. Then I can give them my sob story, which is the missile delivery system that delivers the payload. The actual main weapon that's going to drive you completely crazy is you feel sorry for them. These ones, these vulnerable narcissists, these covert narcissists, these do the most damage, in my humble opinion, just because of the amount of confusion they generate in the host. The amount of confusion they generate in the target is so much, is so high, it's so intense, and you never know from one day to the next which version of them you're dealing with, and you never really know what the truth of them is. You remember the cat in Shrek? The cat who uses the eyes, oh, I'm so sad, to evoke an emotional response in people. And then when they go, oh, look at the cute kitty, that's when he gets his rapier, his sword out and kills them.
I honestly find this guy to be so spot on with his assessments when he's talking about narcissists and the different types of narcissists. And I'd love to hear his take on narcissists who put themselves out on a public platform and use that as a means to bully and manipulate people.